The clerk had her hand on the carrier before she finished reading my intake number out loud. Non-essential organic, she said, not looking at me. Compliance is automatic past this line. Whisper didn't hiss. She didn't even open her eyes all the way. She just folded herself flatter against my collarbone, the way she does when the bus brakes too hard, and let one paw drape over my arm like a seatbelt nobody asked for. The clerk pulled anyway. Her glove caught nothing but air, because Whisper had already poured herself around to my other side without seeming to move at all. Cats do that. Mine does it better than most. Ma'am, the clerk said, to me now, like I'd done something. The animal needs to go in the carrier. She doesn't like carriers, I said. She likes me. I was 10. I'd been awake 19 hours, the settlement was gone, my dad was 3 checkpoints back arguing about manifest weight, and I had exactly one thing left that was mine. I wasn't shouting, though. Shouting never got me anywhere with Whisper, and it wasn't going to get me anywhere here. The clerk called for a supervisor. The supervisor was taller, four-jointed, the kind of pale gray-green that made the overhead light look sick. He had a tablet and a tone he'd clearly used on 100 crying children before me. Outpost policy, he said, reading off the tablet without quite meeting my eyes. Non-essential biological companions are processed separately pending threat classification. This is for everyone's safety. She's not a threat, I said. She's a cat. That is exactly the classification we need to confirm, he said, like that was clever. He reached down himself this time, 2 long fingers going for the scruff the way you'd pick up something that didn't have an opinion about it. Whisper had an opinion. She went loose and heavy in a way that made his fingers slide right off her, the way water slides off a roof, and resettled herself an inch lower against my ribs, tail tucked, utterly unbothered. He tried twice more. Twice more, nothing. Not a scratch. Not a sound out of her. She simply was not somewhere his hands could close around. She's slippery, I offered, because it seemed true and also because his face had gone the particular shade of gray-green that meant frustrated. A line was building behind us. Somebody 3 families back said something in a language I didn't know, and somebody else laughed, not unkindly, the laugh you give a kid losing an argument with a house cat in front of an entire queue. The supervisor decided force needed reinforcements. 2 handlers came over in heavier gloves, the kind with little plates on the knuckles, built for things that bit. One of them actually smiled at me, not mean, just the smile you give a kid before you take her stuffed animal for inspection. This will take 30 seconds, he said. It took longer than that, and not for the reason he expected. The first handler reached in low, smart, going for her hindquarters where cats supposedly can't get traction. Whisper simply rotated. Not fast. Not frantic. She turned her whole body a slow quarter turn against my chest, the way she does on the windowsill at home when the sun moves, and his hand closed on the place she had just stopped being. The second handler tried the scruff again, properly this time, 2 fingers and a thumb, textbook. She let him get there. She let his fingers actually touch fur. And then, without any drama at all, she exhaled, a long, bored, cat-sized sigh, and somehow his hand came away holding nothing, like trying to grab smoke that had simply decided to be somewhere else. He looked at his own glove like it had betrayed him. She does this, I said. She's done it since I was 6. My dad calls it nope. Nobody laughed that time. A third handler arrived with a thin mesh net, the collapsible kind meant for something that struggles. He never got it open all the way. Whisper shifted her weight half an inch the moment the net unfolded, and the mesh caught on his own sleeve instead, tangling his hand. He stood there a second, looking like a man who'd brought a fishing rod to a fight he didn't understand the rules of, then folded the net back up and stepped to the rear of the group. Policy states resistance must be documented, the supervisor said, mostly to his tablet now, mostly to himself. Document it, then, I said. She's resisted 3 times and nobody's bleeding. He didn't write that down, but he stopped trying. The supervisor's tablet beeped. He read whatever was on it twice, his mouth doing something complicated. Threat classification protocols require physical containment for assessment, he said, slower now, like he was reading instructions written for a problem he'd never personally had. Then assess her with me holding her, I said. I'm not non-essential. You are not the one being classified. She's not going anywhere, I'm not. He didn't have an answer for that one written down anywhere on his tablet, and I could tell, because his eyes did a small flick toward the supervisor's booth like he wanted somebody older to come take this off his hands. Somebody older did. She came down the line slow, unhurried, the kind of old but on some species reads as fragile and on this one read as load-bearing. Her plating had gone the color of weathered brass, and she didn't reach for Whisper at all. She just looked at her, really looked, the way you look at something you recognize from a long way off, and her whole posture changed. Stop, she said, to the 2 handlers, not loudly. They stopped. She crouched, slow, joints clicking, and held very still about a meter away. Whisper opened her eyes the rest of the way for the first time since the carrier had come out. She didn't move toward the old handler. She didn't move away either. She just looked back, blue-eyed, narrow, patient, the way she looks at the back door when she already knows it's going to open eventually and isn't going to waste energy asking twice. You see her ears, the old handler said, to the supervisor, not to me. Flat is fear. This is not flat. This is folded, she is choosing stillness. And the markings. She gestured at Whisper's dark mask, dark ears, dark tail without touching any of it. Bloodline markers. Point coloration. This is not a stray's coat. This is a working pattern, bred for a purpose, the way our own line-marked hounds are bred. It's a Siamese, I said. My grandma had 3 of them. 3, the old handler repeated, like the number itself meant something to her. And did they obey her? No, I said. They let her live with them. That's different. She made a sound I didn't have a translation for, low in her chest, that I understood anyway. It was the sound you make when something you suspected gets confirmed in the worst possible way for your paperwork. She stood, slow again, and addressed the supervisor without raising her voice, which seemed to be a rule on this whole outpost that nobody but me had broken yet. Reclassify. This animal is not non-essential. It is bonded, line-marked, and will not be separated from its handler without resistance escalating beyond what this checkpoint is equipped to manage quietly. She's not going to hurt anyone, I said, because that part felt important too. She's never hurt anyone in her life. She just doesn't leave. That, the old handler said, is the part that should concern you more, not less. The supervisor's tablet beeped again, this time with whatever override she'd just authorized, and the 2 handlers in the heavy gloves took a step back without being told to, the careful step of people recalculating exactly how lucky they'd just been. The line moved again. The clerk stamped something without looking at it twice. Nobody apologized, exactly, but the supervisor didn't meet my eyes on the way past either, which from him felt close enough. I carried Whisper through the rest of intake myself, in my arms, no carrier, the way she likes it. She fell asleep somewhere around the baggage scan, chin tucked over my wrist, completely unbothered, like none of it had been worth waking up properly for. My dad found me an hour later, still holding her, and asked how it had gone. Fine, I said. They tried to take her. And? She didn't let them. He looked at Whisper, who opened one eye at him, decided he wasn't interesting enough to fully wake up for, and went back to sleep. No, he said quietly. I don't suppose she would. We walked the rest of the way to the transport gate together, the 3 of us, and nobody at the sieve tried to separate us again. Later, on the shuttle, a woman across the aisle asked if the cat had really vanished out of 3 grown hands the way people in the queue were saying. I told her it was true, mostly, except for the part where people kept adding that Whisper had growled at anyone. She hadn't. Not once. That seemed to bother people most, once they thought about it with nothing else to do, that the whole thing had been won without so much as a raised paw, just a cat who declined, calmly, every single time, to be somewhere she hadn't agreed to be. That night, in our new bunk, smaller than the old one, my dad set his boots by the door the way he always does and looked over at Whisper curled against my side, eyes already half closed. "Your grandma used to say those cats picked their people," he said. "Never the other way around." "She picked the whole bus," I said. "She just lets me carry her." He laughed, quietly, and turned off the light, and in the dark I could hear Whisper's breathing go slow and even, the sound of something that had already decided, long before any of us reached that checkpoint, exactly how this was going to end.